You're listening to The Jake Asman Show on the SportsMap Radio Network.
Presented by Rocket Mortgage.
Live from the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's Jake Asman.
Our next guest works as hard as any in our industry. He's all over the sports scene in Chicago. He's a host on WCKG in Chicago from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Central Time during the week. He is Jon Zaghloul, and he joins us right now to talk all things Bears, Justin Fields, and much more on our progressive guest line. Jon, appreciate the time, my friend. Thanks for coming on.
Of course. Thank you, Jake. Really excited to be here.
So how excited are you and basically the entire city of Chicago that it appears, and we'll see how it plays out, of course, but it appears like the Bears might have found their franchise quarterback of the future, Justin Fields?
It's very exciting to be a Chicago Bears fan. And as you know, Jake, the Bears have had just such a storied history at not developing quarterbacks. It's been the complete opposite of every other team, really, in the NFL. So nice to see them go out and actually make a move like this. Personally, I'm a bit skeptical still, and I think I have every right to be based on the Bears' past, especially knowing that they just moved up to get Mitch Trubisky a couple of years ago, and obviously that didn't work out the best. That said, a lot of people are buying in, which I'm surprised about. I'm surprised to see these many people just kind of forget about what Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy did over the years, but we'll have to see how it plays out. I do like the fact that they decided to take a big swing, and, this is going to be something in which, especially for Nagy and Pace, if this doesn't work out, Jake, their 10 years in Chicago are over. So they're taking a big swing. They're trying to save their careers. They're trying to save this organization, and we're just going to have to see how it works.
And Jon, you make a great point. That's what I wanted to bring up next. How much of this pick was about, hey, if we draft a quarterback, if we move up and get someone, if you're Ryan Pace, that might buy you some more time as opposed to just, going into this year with Andy Dalton, if the team doesn't make the playoffs or the team is just bad, then you're talking about a guy that's probably out of a job.
Oh, this bought him at least 2 more years. And I've said this regularly on my program, and I think people really need to realize that a lot of people are just so overjoyed about the pick, and that's fine. I get it. It's a franchise quarterback, first time in a long time the Bears have had this much excitement surrounding a quarterback prospect. But everybody has to remember, last year during the season, there was an active fire Pace, fire Nagy presence within the Chicago Bears fan community. And now all of a sudden it's, well, I'm apologizing to Ryan Pace, and people are writing apology letters and posting them on social media. A game hasn't been played yet, and you have no clue how Justin Fields is going to develop, especially under Matt Nagy. So this definitely bought them some more time, and we're going to have to see how it plays out for both of their job statuses. If they win, they're going to be around for a while. If they start losing again, I'm very curious to see when the plug is pulled.
Do you think that Fields was their guy all along? They'll never say, we really wanted Zach Wilson, but we ended up with Fields. But, let's say it was reversed and it was Trey Lance, the guy there at 11. Do you think they would have been aggressive for him? Or they obviously could have had Mac Jones. We know he wasn't their guy. But as far as Fields being the guy, do you think he was truly the guy they targeted all along?
I would hope so. There were a lot of mock drafts, and the Bears had expressed a lot of interest in Kellen Mond, actually, and obviously he went in the second round to Minnesota. So I think what kind of happened is they were shocked, just like everybody else, that Justin Fields was still out there at number 11, and they thought, why not pull the trigger? I know Ryan Pace has a good relationship with Dave Gettleman, who's the New York Giants general manager, and they pulled off the trade. So I think he was their guy, but they were so shocked that he was still out there at number 11 that they thought we might as well move up right now and get him. We don't know what New England's going to do.
Jon Zaghloul with us here. We're talking all things Chicago Bears with Jon. You can find him on Twitter at Jon Z Sports as he joins us on our progressive guest line. So as far as when we see Fields, Jon, how many games into the regular season do we see Justin Fields? If you had to set the over-under on games played for Justin, what would that be?
Assuming there's going to be a 17-game season, I would say Fields probably plays this year 8 games. I'd say the over-under right around 8. I just hope they don't rush him, Jake, and that's the thing I've said a lot too. Everybody's so anxious to see him play, but you have to remember they did pay Andy Dalton $10 billion, and I'm of the idea that they should at least develop him correctly. There's no need to rush him out there. You're not expected to win anything this year, realistically. Why not give him as much time as he needs? Make sure he's developed correctly, and then possibly next season, when we go to 2022, you could have him start every game and then have him be the best quarterback he could be.
Jon, what's your take on Matt Nagy as a head coach? As an outsider looking in, I see a guy that got to the playoffs a couple times with Mitch Trubisky, but then any Bears fan that I talk to, they detest this guy. And to me, the resume doesn't make it seem like he's as bad as he's been. I mean, I watched Adam Gase coach my team for 2 years. That's a bad coach. Like, what is your take on what, who Matt Nagy is as a coach and how you think he'll do developing now Justin Fields?
Well, the perception, Jake, is that Matt Nagy, yes, has a good record and led the Bears to the playoffs twice with Mitch Trubisky, and I know that's an accomplishment in and of itself, but the fact remains that a lot of people believe that Matt Nagy, in a way, didn't set up Mitch Trubisky to succeed. Everybody knows that he was not the guy coming in, Mitch, and Nagy didn't prefer him coming in, but he kind of promised Bears management, hey, I'm going to do my best to turn him into a good player. And as we saw, especially in 2019 and towards the end of last season, Nagy didn't really set him up for success. And I don't know if you remember this, Jake, but especially later in the season, down the stretch when they faced Green Bay and then faced New Orleans in the playoffs, Nagy said at first, I'm not calling plays. Then he came out and said, well, we've been splitting play calling duties. That should have been a much bigger story here in Chicago, and it was buried because the Bears were in the playoffs and everybody was so worried about Mitch Trubisky and the offense and bunch of other small storylines. Matt Nagy has not been honest with media and with fans about play calling. And a lot of people believe he didn't set up Mitch Trubisky for success. So I think it's fair to have these reservations about him when it comes to developing another quarterback prospect. Now, that said, I do believe Justin Fields is his guy. Mitch Trubisky wasn't, obviously. So maybe he'll have a different attitude towards developing him. But then you turn around and say, well, if he didn't like Mitch Trubisky, why didn't he, at least help him out? So there are a lot of things going on with Matt Nagy here in Chicago. It's a very weird relationship. That said, he did win football games. He has a winning record, so you can't say too many bad things about him yet.
What are your thoughts, John, just on the rest of the Bears draft here? Did they improve as a team? What's the perception of how Chicago did in the draft besides trading up, of course, for Fields?
Oh, they did a great job. I mean, I gave them an A- draft pick only because of the Fields uncertainty at the moment, although I think he'll be okay. I mean, Tevin Jenkins, offensive tackle, Larry Borum, offensive tackle. The Bears' offensive line last year was totally depleted. Whether it was Mitch Trubisky or Nick Foles, they were running for their lives every second. And they go in the late rounds, draft running back Khalil Herbert, who's also a good kick returner, and Daz Newsome, the wide receiver. And Ryan Pace does a hell of a job at drafting these diamonds in the rough. I mean, Darnell Mooney is going to be the number 2 wide receiver this year, had a great rookie year. He was a 5th-round wide receiving draft pick. So they do a great job at drafting in the late rounds. And I think overall, their entire team improved. And as long as the quarterback works out, this is an A-plus draft, no question.
Spending a few minutes over the phone talking all things Bears and Justin Fields with the host on WCKG in Chicago, the host of Sports Talk Chicago, Jon Zaghloul with us here. You can find him on Twitter at John Z Sports. So, John, you look at the Bears quarterback room now. You obviously have Andy Dalton. They said he'll be the starter. They draft Justin Fields. They move up to get him, so we know it's only a matter of time until they put him in a game. Then you have Nick Foles, and they acquired him in a deal last year. Nick Foles' contract makes him, pretty easy to move if a team wanted him. Do you expect a trade coming in the next couple weeks here with Nick Foles?
I would hope they do so. Nick Foles, that has been quite a detestable trade from the beginning. I know last year a lot of people loved it. People said, oh, he's a Super Bowl MVP, going to be great for the Bears. And he turned around and had 10 touchdowns, 8 picks in 8 games. Now you have a situation where you're paying Andy Dalton $10 million. You have Justin Fields, who we all know is going to be starting eventually. There's no need for Nick Foles to be there. They've had Tyler Bray in the practice squad, the quarterback. He's been on there all year, and it was a running joke amongst Bears media last year that every week the Bears would come out and say, we're retaining the rights to Tyler Bray, we're keeping him on the practice squad, but he never actually played a game, and he's always been the consensus third string. So why are you going to have a third string in Nick Foles, whom you're already paying a lot of money? You're going to pay Andy Dalton. Then you have Justin Fields and Tyler Bray still in the practice squad. I do expect a trade before the season begins. Maybe it'll happen in camp. Maybe they want to test out Nick Foles and see what he could do and see what he could bring to the table. But that said, I would hope they're seeking some trade partners here. The salary isn't too much this year because they paid him a lot in year one. So it should be pretty easy to move him and get something in return.
You look at Nick Foles, man. I mean, I'd love to see him on the Jets as a backup. Joe Douglas has that relationship with him going back to Philly. I mean, Foles could be that mentor to Zach Wilson. Now, am I crazy for wanting Nick Foles to get back in the backup role for Zach Wilson?
As long as you emphasize the role backup, you are not crazy. He should not even play another NFL game if it were up to me. He's been an embarrassment these past couple of years, but if you want him to teach somebody, if you want him to be a mentor, I am totally okay with that. I mean, hey, say what you want. I thought he did an okay job, at least somewhat supporting Mitch Trubisky last year, and he's done a good job in that role before, obviously, with Carson Wentz. I'd be okay with that, and I'd be open to it as long as there's an emphasis that he is not playing a single snap on the field, and he could be like a Josh McCown type of guy. I could see that.
John, while I have you, let's talk some baseball for a moment. Let me start with the White Sox. They're 16-12 right now. Obviously, they had a lot of expectations coming into the year. There's a report out that maybe Tony La Russa is starting to wear thin with some in the clubhouse. Some of the decisions that he's made, people are starting to really question. What are your thoughts on that? Obviously, hiring him in the first place was a major surprise for basically every baseball fan.
So I was a fan of the hiring. I know I'm in the minority when I say that. I know a lot of people didn't like it because, again, 76 years old, very young core. No one knew how it was going to work. I think the White Sox have done a good job considering the injuries they've had. You know, Eloy Jimenez was out. He got hurt during spring training. Now Luis Roberts going to be out 10 to 12 weeks. Those are two major pieces of their core who were supposed to have breakout seasons, Jake. And now they're out of the job. And, I mean, they're hurt. They're not coming back for a while. So I thought he's done an okay job. He has made some questionable lineup decisions, you know, playing Billy Hamilton as much as he has, or Jake Lamb, and Yasmani Grandal hasn't been hitting well. But at the end of the day, I think they're doing an okay job. Jose Abreu came out the other day and said, well, you know, Tony La Russa is going to help us get through this because of his experience. And a lot of people have to remember he is a Hall of Fame manager. He does know what he's doing. I think over time, everything's going to be okay. We have to place some of the blame on some of these players, even Abreu to an extent, who haven't been hitting yet, and I think it'll come. And I've been telling White Sox fans from the beginning, it's not time to panic yet. And now when you have these injuries, I think everybody deserves another year because these guys aren't healthy. And if they were fully healthy, I think the record would be completely different. That said, they're 4 games above 500. They're contending for the AL Central Division title as it is right now. I think that's an accomplishment considering the injuries they have.
And then as far as the Chicago Cubs go, John, you look at them coming into the year. I'm not quite sure what people expected for them, kind of a team in flux right now, but they did take 2 from the Dodgers yesterday in a doubleheader. They're 14-16 right now, only 3.5 games behind the Cardinals in that National League Central. Give us your early season thoughts on how the Chicago Cubs have looked in your mind.
I'm very surprised that they did sweep the Dodgers, but 14-16 is about where I saw them to be. I thought they'd be a 500 team. I said 83-79 before the season began, similar to 2009, actually, where after the 2008 season, there were these high expectations, and they essentially played 500 baseball, and then they started to rebuild by 2010. I think that's where the Cubs are right now. I know there's been a lot of talk about Chris Bryant and how well he's done and whether they'll trade him. I would say no matter what the case is, Jake, by the trade deadline, I don't care if you actually have a playoff spot, if you have a wild card spot, if you're a division title leader at that point, trade Chris Bryant, get as much as you can back because he's playing excellent baseball. This team is not a World Series contender. We can all agree on that. So why not build for the future starting now and get a big haul for Bryant?
He's Jon Zaghloul. You can follow him once again on Twitter at John Z Sports. You can listen to his show on WCKG Chicago from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Central Time during the week. Also, check out his work at sportstalkchicago.com. John, appreciate you coming on. Great insight, my man. Keep up the good work. You're crushing it, and it's great to get you on the show.
Hey, thank you, Jake. You too, and best wishes moving forward. We'll do it again soon.
There he is, John, checking in, giving us the latest on the Bears and, of course, Justin Fields. And you got to talk some baseball when you get a guy on from Chicago, and you got not one but 2 intriguing teams early on here in the MLB season. John joined us there on our Progressive guest line, quoting home insurance. Just got easier by using Progressive's Home Quote Explorer. Quote and buy all online at progressive.com. We'll take a quick break, be right back, wrap up hour 1 of 2 right here on a Wednesday on SportsMap Radio.
The Jake Asman Show.
I'm more of a steak than a chicken guy, but if you listen to the show